So, you want to get into Godzilla. You saw King of the Monsters, you saw the trailers, and you thought to yourself, this looks fun, but how do I get into this fandom? Well, this is where your old pal Deadpoolzilla comes in, because if there's anything to emphasize on with my name, it's definitely the Zilla. Just don't think about the 98 movie. Anyway, so, this is going to be a video talking about a beginner's guide to being a Godzilla fan. Now, I will say that unlike with Game of Thrones or anything like that, Godzilla is probably both the easiest and hardest fandom to get into. It's easy in the sense where it's completely accessible, but it's also hard to figure out where to go in terms of continuity, because there's a lot. So, here's a quick rundown of not just movies, but I'm also going to give some comic recommendations to you guys out there who want to get into Godzilla. So, let's begin with, of course, the 1954 film Gojira, or its American cut, Godzilla King of the Monsters. Now, admittedly, both the Japanese and English cut, the English cut starring Raymond Burr, are both pretty good, although, of course, the original Japanese cut is by far superior. But I do have a lot of love for the American cut from the film, Gojira. It does have the same level of darkness and same level of care for the film that the original Japanese cut has. But if I was to pick one, it would definitely be the original Japanese cut of Gojira. So, of course, as always, you always got to start at the beginning, which is 54. Now, for Showa films, there's a lot of good, but there's also a lot of bad, too. So, my advice, skip over Raids again. It's the second film in the series, and it's not great. I would also recommend skipping over Godzilla's Revenge. Son of Godzilla is debatable if you want to have that kind of fun, cutesy action. But the major ones you would have to watch for the Showa era for Beginner's Guide is, of course, Gojira, Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster, which is, of course, the movie that is the major inspiration behind now new King of the Monsters film. You also have Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and its sequel, Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is also a sequel to the other film, and also those two films are the last of the Showa films. In terms of other Showa Godzilla films, I would recommend Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, which is the follow-up to Three-Headed Monster. So, from there, those are the major ones I would also say. And, before I forget, Godzilla vs. Mothra. Technically first time that Toho's two biggest monsters they had in their film category to fight one another. I would also suggest Godzilla vs. King Kong, but that film is that's a very you love it or hate it movie. But with Godzilla vs. Kong coming out next year, it's probably best that you check out the original film that's based on. Just saying. I would also throw out a few non-Godzilla films that came out at this time. Of course, Rodan and Mothra, since they're going to be in this movie, as well as War of the Gargantuas as another non-Godzilla film, but still set in that cinematic universe. Destroy All Monsters, I would say, give it a look, but personally I'm not a fan, even though that's a very beloved one in the fandom. I kind of think it's a little overrated, personally. So in terms of other Godzilla films, we move on to the entirety of the Heisei films, which is not a lot. It's only 6 films, but it definitely harkens to the darkness that the original film had. Now, granted, 2 of those films are kind of a little more lighthearted and fantastical, and there is some fantastical elements in there, here and there. But the first film of Godzilla, 1984, or Return of Godzilla, and this film is really harkens to the darkness and really updates Godzilla. And you don't really need to watch the Showa era to really get it. What you do need to watch, though, because it more or less discounts the entirety of the Showa films, with the exception of the original 54 film. So as long as you watch the 54 film, you can watch the Heisei era in its entirety. Favorites of mine in there, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla, of course, Godzilla 1984, and Godzilla vs. Biollante. and Godzilla vs. Destroya. Although I do have a weak spot for Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but 3 of those films I really enjoy. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, eh. So, we now move on to the Millennium series, and here's where it gets interesting. You see, the Millennium series, while a lot of them vastly ignored both the Showa-era films and the Heisei films, the problem was that they didn't even follow their own continuity, save for 2 films. While they did all acknowledge the continuity of the 1954 film, they were all just kind of like one-and-done stories. My 2 personal favorites of the Millennium series are Godzilla Against Mechagodzilla and its direct sequel, Godzilla Tokyo SOS. Those are the only 2 films that had any continuity with one another. As for I would also say Godzilla 2000, which was more or less Japan's middle finger to Roland Emmerich's steaming pile of 98 garbage. So, go check out that one. I would also say, even though I'm not the biggest fan of it, I would also recommend Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. Try saying that 10 times fast. As a other one, since that one's very well looked on. I personally have my issues with it, but I fully acknowledge that it is a valid film in there. But it really does. You really have to suspend your disbelief in that one. Godzilla's more supernatural. He's a villain, and Ghidorah's the good guy. There's some moments that just kind of make you question it. But I do have respect for that movie. Also, side note, I would also recommend, not a Godzilla film, but I would recommend the Heisei Gamera trilogy, which for the Heisei era was from the late 80s to the 90s, just for reference. And the Gamera trilogy is spectacular. Just, if you're looking for good, it's the Dark Knight trilogy of Kaiju films, just saying. So, there you go in terms of Godzilla films for beginners, and really enjoy from there. But what about comics? Now, IDW and Dark Horse did several comics, and while they're really hard to find, I would try to say check out Godzilla Age of Monsters, which was Godzilla fighting a lot of original Kaiju in his own stories. But with IDW, there was a lot, because they actually had the comic rights to do Kaiju from the Toho films. And the one I would recommend above all else is Godzilla the Half-Century War, written and drawn by James Stokoe. It's a beautiful mini-series of beautiful artwork that really highlights both the human drama and kaiju drama of Godzilla in its entirety. It's its own continuity, you don't have to read any of the backup comics, it's really great. In terms of Godzilla main comic continuity, I would just recommend reading Godzilla Rulers of Earth in its entirety. While it is connected to Godzilla Kingdom of Monsters and the quote-unquote Godzilla ongoing, which only lasted 13 issues, those two previous ones, aside from Rulers of Earth, are pretty bad. They're not really necessary reading, in all honesty, for Rulers of Earth. They just kind of give you some little background, which you can easily pick up on your own. But Rulers of Earth in all 6 volumes, and I think there was several compendium volumes as well. But yeah, in that regard, check out those volumes, because Chris Mallory, who writes the comic, along with Matt Frank and Jeff Zornell, who do the artwork, it's a great love letter to the Godzilla fandom. Another 2 miniseries from the Godzilla comics I would really recommend are Godzilla in Hell, which is pretty much a miniseries of which Godzilla is in hell, fighting demons and, the devil himself. So, that's another one. That's another one of its self-continuity, which it all has great artwork, starting with James Stokoe doing the first issue. And Godzilla Rage Across Time, which is a nice little story, miniseries of Godzilla in the past, where he takes on Orochi from Japanese mythology, as well as taking on the entire Greek god pantheon. Another excellent little addition there. So if you ever want to see Godzilla go Kratos on the Olympians, here you go. There's also a great fight between Mothra and another kaiju named Megaguirus in that series that revolves around the Black Plague in Rage Across Time. So there you go, guys. That is a little bit of kaiju reading as well as watching for all you newbies out there. So my advice, go out there, go check them out. The DVDs are kind of either easy or hard to find. Some harder to find than others, but for the vast majority, you can probably find a lot of they're being syndicated the hell out of a TV recently. Can't imagine why. What with a big movie and all. But yes, so you guys, hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you new fans out there enjoyed this, and I will see you guys later.